Well, it's 5 a.m. and I'm in what has to be the world's most popular reflection shot of the mountains. This is at Lake Matheson, and I'm hoping I might even be the only one here. That was a bit of wishful thinking that I might actually have this location all to myself. Not going to happen in this spot. It's kind of like hoping you would have Mesa Arch in Utah all to yourself for sunrise. This is a very popular spot for photographers, and it's kind of like a pilgrimage that every photographer has to do at least once. As you can see, there was about 5 or 6 other photographers there when I was there, and I'm sure if it wasn't for the pandemic there would have been probably 30 or 40 other photographers there. So I'm glad I went when I did. And I was very early. I was the first one there, so I managed to get the best spot. With those other photographers on location, I wasn't going to be that annoying guy that blabbers to his camera while they're trying to enjoy a peaceful morning of photography, so I didn't talk to the camera while I was on location. That's why you're seeing this footage now, and why I'm talking to you here in the studio. You might be questioning the lack of clouds that I had on this morning, but actually it didn't bother me too much. You really want to have the mountain out of the clouds and to see the reflection. And really, I think I kind of like that there's that very gradual gradient of blue, different shades of blue, and a very smooth gradient that I think is quite interesting. And of course you have all that mist coming off the lake, which adds a lot of atmosphere to the scene. I'm going to show you now what the photo was like that I got on this location. Now, I got lots of photos, but I did narrow it down to just the one that I thought was the best, which happened to be after the sun had actually already risen and was shining on the trees, which was helpful in bringing out the highlights in the trees. But what was most impressive about this location, I think, was not what you see, but in fact what you hear. And I was quite surprised at how amazing the sounds were in this location. I was actually really fortunate to be the first one on location, and so I had the place all to myself for maybe 5 minutes. And the first thing I did was I brought out my Zoom recorder and I did some audio recording. And so I'm not going to put any music to this photo because we've got a virtual symphony of nature, and I'm going to play that over top of the picture here, and you can hear what it actually sounded like when I was there. Well, I hope you're wearing your headphones. I don't know about you guys, but for me, the picture is almost secondary to the audio of this. And I just kind of managed to find a nice picture to accompany that audio. You know you're in a different part of the world when you hear sounds like that. And of course, New Zealand is well known for its bird life, and it's obviously quite exotic sounding compared to most other parts of the world. So now let's have a look at what I did to this post-production. The actual moment of sunrise in this location at this time of year doesn't really work very well because the sun would crest the horizon at approximately this position, which is entirely behind all the mountains, and literally everything in this scene would have been in shade. And with no clouds in the sky to reflect the sunrise, it would be kind of a hopeless situation. So this shot is approximately a half an hour after sunrise, with the sun in approximately this position, which is a great angle for bringing out the highlights in the trees here. And I did do quite a lot of dodging on these trees to bring out the highlights. So the big question is, were those birds really there, and was I alert enough to actually capture that moment? And the answer is yes and no. The birds were there, and they did come bombing all the way down the full length of the lake right past us. But when I captured them, they weren't in exactly that position. Of course, I had the camera on automatic bracketing settings and with the 2-second timer on, so the chances of getting those birds in that exact position were pretty remote based on how I had the camera set. So the actual frame where I captured the birds, they were all the way back here, which is quite far back, and their color wasn't that much different from the mountain, so it was very hard to select them. Unfortunately, there was no luminosity mask or quick selection tool that could cleanly select those birds because they really weren't much different in color to the background that they were over top of. So I had to actually manually select them, and then I brought them forward all the way to where I really wanted them to be in the picture. You might question how I scaled up the size of the birds without pixelating them. Well, the answer to that is I didn't scale them up. Instead, I reduced the resolution of the overall picture while keeping the birds in the same size. So the trade-off to that is we don't have a very high resolution version of this photo because it's been scaled down to match the size of the birds, and we're looking at it almost at full resolution now. There's the before edit and the after edit. And you can see that the birds are not there in the original, and now they are there, having come from a previous frame of the same composition. A pretty short episode today, but I thought that this image deserved its own video because it doesn't really go with anything else. And I think that I'm going to give this image about a 8 out of 10. And if you were to include the audio, well, I might even give myself the first 9 out of 10. But that's about it for this episode. We'll see you next time.